Hi, everybody. How are you this morning?
Good morning. Good morning. Are you in a car?
I am. Wow, we have a lot of people joining. So hold on. We have more than 25 people joining on this call. This is going to be epic.
People. I said, look at all the people.
I know.
We're gonna have 10.
This is a large group. I hope
There are
everybody's doing
people?
well.
A lot of guys can't wear a hat like that.
Good morning.
I like it because it has a little frillies on it. Good morning.
Good morning.
Cheers. Where are you talking from, Chris?
Just talking from the car. We're up at Mont Tremblant, coming not racing, but we actually came skiing today.
Okay. Cool. How's the weather? Cold?
It's bitterly cold. That's actually
All
the
right.
big downside of this weekend.
Okay. I went to
really,
see your
really
car
cold.
last night.
Well, so I was thinking that I think we're going to do one from Jason's place.
That sounds good.
Sounds good.
So I take it it's not, the bidding hasn't started yet?
Good morning, everybody.
Morning.
Morning.
Morning. Good morning and good morning.
Yeah.
Paul, good morning. How are you today?
Outstanding. You?
Paul, I have to tell you, I got tons of feedback from your show. I mean, it was really, really good. Thank you very much.
Sorry, you set a ridiculously high bar.
You did set a very high bar. In
You
fact,
passed.
there was a lot of questions and things that we were discussing on that call from emails that I got afterwards that we're going to do another show. And I'm going to bring, I actually got some other participants who raced rotaries at the time. Phil Cooper, who raced rotaries during the 1980s, who called and said, I'd like to do some of the calls, be on one of these as well. And Russ also would like to join. So I think we're going to do another rotary show in a couple, like in 3-4 sessions from now.
Well, that'd be awesome.
Yeah. So, I mean, there was lots of interest from people about how the rotaries work, how it's going and everything like that. It's really a really good episode. So I thank you so much for doing that.
Well, you know that rotary engines are witchcraft, right?
Well, that's it. I think it interests a lot of people, right? That they're so different. You know, like just I like to, the fact that you had a rotor out, you showed us the chamber and everything like that was really interesting.
Cool. My pleasure.
Okay, so people are joining still.
What kind of feedback are you getting? Because I've got the two devices on.
Yep.
Is it
I got
horrible?
side
sound?
profile. Yeah, it's very nice.
No, but are you getting lots of echo?
Yes, we are.
There's a bit,
Yes.
Ted, you might want to turn microphones off on some of them.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Come on,
yeah.
All right. The second one's muted. Is that better?
Much better.
That's much better.
Now, can you mute yourself, Ted?
No.
Can I do anything about myself?
Is it possible you just show us around and keep yourself
Well, I'm
muted?
going to do that. I forgot my webcam,
right.
so we're doing this on my iPad for the stationary portion and my iPhone for the walk-around portion.
Wow.
So,
Oh,
so
you're so
Ted, which
organized.
one would you like to start with? I'll make you host on one of them. Which one
Yeah.
would you like to start with?
So you can, let's start with some basic background. So I'll do that.
Oh,
in the
no,
sitting
sorry. I
position.
wanted to know if you wanted to start with the iPhone as being host, or did you want to do the?
Make
pad.
the iPhone host.
Okay.
Can we
I will
have
do
them in
that?
stereo?
Yep. You can have me in stereo if you want.
There we go. So I've given you now host
Autographs are
view.
available in the lobby.
I've given you host view now. So
All
you're all
right.
set, Ted.
Well, so in your host feature, do you want to run that video clip I sent you? Good morning, everyone. I'm taking this video before the actual Zoom meeting so that I can just play it for you. That way I don't have to go outside when we're trying to tour the facility. This is the shop I had built a couple of years ago. It's 7.5 kilometers away from Canadian Tire Motorsport Park. This is an industrial subdivision in the little town of Pontypool. I'm going to switch the camera over now to project as opposed to looking at me all the time. So not a terribly exciting neighborhood, right? Bunch of steel buildings. There's a distribution company, a metal fabricator, a cabinet maker. Down the road, there's a sign maker, and at the corner, there's a big concrete plant. Here you go. Exciting. It's a driveway with a big steel building. The lot beside me is owned by the concrete folks at the end of the street. Apparently, they wanted to buy my lot. Craig DeShane saw this on a real estate site, and I bought it the day after it was listed. They were a little upset with me at the time. And I think they'd like to buy it from me now. I, of course, would like to buy their lot because it's beside me and I could use some more parking lot. Anyway, it's 1.5 acres, 6,000 square feet. We built a little impound area last year because one of the guys had a trailer parked in the parking area here and somebody broke into it and stole some tires and other stuff. So that was quite upsetting. So now if the guys are going to leave a trailer here overnight, we take the cars off anyway, but we lock the trailers up in the impound just to keep it safe. It's also where the tractor is that Craig uses to clear all of this snow. As you can see, we've had a fair bit of it. There's a second lot behind me that somebody's owned for years. And now that I put a building up, they're talking about constructing something in the near future. This farm to the east of us, the owner died a few years ago, and apparently it's going to go up for sale. The guy who owns the concrete and the lot beside me wants it desperately and has already been talking to them. I'm thinking that I might not mind buying it too, selling the concrete guy my lot and just moving everything across the street. There were some mistakes we made when we built this building that we could correct, obviously. But anyway. Which is how I want it. Security cameras, just, got to put that plug in for people. All right, I'm going to turn off this video and we'll go back to the live feed. Thanks, everybody.
I'm not. I'm going to put it in post-production.
Well, the whole idea was to show it to people so I don't have to go outside.
Well, but the only people who won't see it are the 21 here, and then they just have to tune into the video and they'll see it later on today.
So he's giving you a teaser, folks. What I did this morning was
Ted recorded a pre-session of the outside of his garage-mahal, and I will put that into post-production, and in the video on YouTube, everybody will be able to see that part.
So everybody's gonna have to watch the video on YouTube. Nice play. I like that.
Yeah, it's not bad.
Okay, well, so the way of background, guys, I put this building up, I think it was 3 years ago now, to have easy access to the CTMP because I had more cars than I could fit in the shop at the house.
You ready?
And so that's the whole purpose of this. Now, for those of you who don't know, I'm an accountant by trade. So this thing is set up in a holding company, HST registered, all those legitimate business things, because it is being run as a business. And that may not be an option that's available to all the members, but so we're keeping this as Revenue Canada legal as we possibly can. Do what you want with that. All right, I'm going to switch to the walk around camera now, which means you want the display for Ted's iPhone as opposed to Ted's iPad up, guys. Mute the iPad. I can figure out how. Mute.
So Ted, you just make that a spotlight. You want me to do it for you?
Sure.
Okay, so I need host back then.
Take host back.
I can't take it
We
back.
got
I
you.
have to. Oh yeah, I can do claim host. Okay, I'll take it back, and then I'll make your iPad the spotlight.
No, you make my iPhone the spotlight.
iPhone the spotlight. Here we go.
Cool. All right. So
Thank God, I'm not counting Ted's nose.
it's 6,000 square feet, guys, 60 by 100. Why are we here in this other one? Turn it off. All right. It's basically divided into 3 different components. There's a second floor mezzanine, which was legally set up as meeting rooms and office space. So this is just a storage room that was put on the second floor. The original plan was to be able to
This is Ted's
set
garage.
up work tables up here to actually do engine assembly. Craig pointed out that he'd need 2 complete sets of tools to do that, so we're not doing it anymore. But those
So who's
doors,
Craig?
Craig DeShane,
Oh, Craig DeShane. Okay.
and he might be on the call. I mean, the doors open up so that we can use a forklift to move things up and down into this room, if that helps at all. Right now, it's just being used as a bedroom for my kids when they come with me. Not very many car things, right, guys?
So this is the area that, according to the blueprints, was set up as a meeting room or office. And it's just designed so I have living space, someplace to crash at the track other than the toter home. So it's just a, I don't know that it's of interest to anybody. Little kitchenette, full bathroom, all that sort of stuff. That was my 12-year-old daughter, if anybody saw somebody watching TV. This is probably the best place to start the actual view of the garage. So this the balcony on the second floor leading down to the warehouse or storage area. So just panning slowly. Everybody wave hi to the McCords. They're here working on something today. Say hi, guys. Industrial racking for the cars. Significant part of the garage is, so we have inside storage for the toter home. And then there's another space we use for bringing cars in and out, moving things around. Down to the ground
so
floor.
Ted, so you have other people that are tenants in your area, is that correct? And they bring in their cars and they can work on them as they see fit?
Yeah, so there are 32 storage bays. I think I am using 16 of them, and 16 of them are rented out to club members. Again, the idea is it's just an inexpensive place for guys to keep their cars close to the track. The McCords are sorting through some parts.
Yeah,
We did a
we're trying.
deal where we bought an estate in the fall, and Jeff and Rob are sorting through the parts to see what's resaleable. In fact, they've done a great job of selling things so far. So if any of you are thinking of getting Porsche 356s, talk to these guys.
Here's an original Coney shock absorber. Still has its blue paint on it, sort of. And they're available at a very reasonable price.
The kit is not available. All right. Wave the camera. No, I don't think so.
Hey, Ted, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
So this is a technical kind of business question relative to the fact that you're an alleged accountant. So
Alleged.
yeah, well, I'm an alleged engineer. It's the same thing. Like I used to be and now I do less. So your income that you claim as part of the business, that comes from the rental of the other units then?
From the rental of the units and the hourly rates that are charged for Craig. So
Okay.
I bill myself for the work that Craig does on my cars.
Okay. All right. And then your company also has a sponsorship, I imagine, with said company as well, right?
Actually, I don't do much of that because that's the riskiest kind of transaction to do in this sort of setup.
Okay.
What I used to do was sponsor other teams and have them sponsor my team.
Right.
So kind of a 2 or 3-way thing.
Yeah.
Perfectly legal, all legitimate. My concern with this particular place is that I just didn't want to raise any red flags. I mean, we're running a couple $100,000 worth of revenue through here. It's a legitimate business, and I'm collecting HST.
Yeah.
But there's no sense, hitting Revenue Canada with a stick.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Again, so this is all just storage. The building is heated by geothermal. We're using 2 different units. One unit for what we're calling this warehouse area. We keep it at 55 in the winter. And I don't think it ever got over about 70 in the summer because it's such a huge space and it's well insulated. And then we've got the shop area and the living area are on a separate unit. And we're going into the shop area now. So this is where Craig Deshane works 5 days a week. I mean, it's a full-time job for him. It is, as far as I can tell, it's a reasonably well-equipped shop. I mean, if he needs something, we go out and buy it. I think he's got everything he needs now. The 2-tier list has got my 23 on it. I broke the drive shaft on one side last year, so I've been told by Craig those parts are coming in next week. There's actually room here for 3 cars to be worked on at a time. Doesn't look like a lot of space, but a car will fit into this area in front of that workbench. A car will fit in this area in front of that workbench. And then, of course, there's the one in the center. Craig only ever usually keeps 1 car in here at a time because it's less confusing. Although right now he's got, that's my 356 engine in pieces. That is an engine out of one of the Sprites. That's the engine out of my Lotus 23. And in these boxes is the engine to Stefan Wieson's album. So we've got stuff all over the place.
So let's go through some of that. Like, so Steph, if my understanding is correct, like an Alpha, like Steven's car, uses like an MG engine, right?
That's correct.
Yeah. Okay.
And it had issues with the head. So I believe that's the block for Stefan's car, but the head is out being repaired. He blew a gasket, and I think there's a crack between 2 and 3 cylinder.
Okay. So gaskets on MG engines, at least MGB or MG engines. I mean, I hear about that all the time. So I think there's probably people on the call that know there's one kind that's better, right? It's the copper one. That's the one that's supposed to be used. Is that everybody speak up on that?
We use the composite ones.
Yeah, the pan gasket is the go-to gasket. It's a composite gasket.
Yeah, and that's what we're using on the Sprites too now. I mean, it's just, the idea is it's got a little bit of softness compared to the copper so that you can get a better seal. But I mean, the real issue with all these English engines is we're blowing too much horsepower through something that was designed to do something entirely different.
Exactly.
Stock Sprite engine is 49 horsepower if you're lucky. The race engines are probably 7.
What compression ratio are you running?
On the Sprites, I think Craig will tell you that we're running 11.5 or 12.
Okay.
I mean, I'm not sure what else there is to see, guys, unless you want to look at individual cars. I mean, these are more.
Yeah, well,
parts.
I do want to go see.
Who's ever talking? I can't understand a word you're saying.
So
So Ted,
I was
tell us
thinking maybe we
about
could go look at the.
Just on a Zoom meeting.
What do you want to look at?
Let's look at the V. Tell us about the story about the V. I know you had to do a lot of prep work for to receive.
Oh, the Formula V. Okay.
Hey, careful now. Start at the top.
I'm taking this computer out of here too. So you know what? Yeah, one thing to think about, guys. At least there are cars representing each of our 3 divisions here in the shop: Formula Classic, Classic, and Vintage Historic. So this was Matt Garwood's Formula V. Craig had to redo the braking system.
Blocking problems.
I think that was the major work that he had to do. I mean, it was obvious that.
Okay,
Matt had
everybody
made some
mute who's not Ted, please. We can hear you talking in your homes.
So back to this. Matt obviously had done some emergency repairs at the track, and Craig had to go through and adjust all of those. I mean, this car, I bought it when we passed the rule allowing Vs to run on our grid because I was afraid none of them would show up. And of course, 6 of them have been showing up on a regular basis, so I don't need the car anymore. So if anybody wants the Formula 1200, I'll give you a deal.
Seriously, Ted, you're going to sell the 1200 now?
I am. I mean, I've never actually driven it on the track.
Okay.
You want one?
No, but I'm going to let Bill Vallis know because there's always people asking us about cars for sale.
Oh, okay. I mean, you guys recognize Stefan's car, and the engine's been out of it now for probably 3 or 4 weeks while Craig waits for parts to come in. The toner
that car is fun because it has the VARAC sticker actually plexiglass, or it's actually in the window, so it'll be unremovable. It'll be there forever.
Which sticker are you talking about?
Well, there should be a VARAC sticker in one of the windows somewhere, and it's actually on the inside, which means it can't be removed. Because I remember when he sold it, before he bought it back, it's actually in one of the windows. So maybe it's out now, but it was there for a long time.
Well, the driver's window is down, so I mean that could be that's the only one we can't see. So no, I must have found a way to remove it, Chris, because it's gone.
A beautiful car.
It is.
And
it always gets the look.
Pretty hot foot. Nice. Well, what else would you like to see? So this is a lift. I mean,
I'd like to see the 356 parts because I like, this is another thing that's different. Air-cooled engines, not everybody has.
Okay.
And the holy grail of the air-cooled engines is that I forget what it was. There's a type engine. It's so narrow, which is always fun. They're high but narrow, and I'm guessing the 356 engine's the same way, whereas it's high but narrow.
Well, I mean, this is the spare 356 engine for my car. Is that look particularly high. I mean, if it weren't for this air assembly on the top, I mean,
Yeah.
they're pretty compact little engines.
But see, like seeing how narrow it, like, you know, from front to back, how narrow it is. So
That's true.
yeah, so that's neat. And of course, the interesting part, right, with the 356 engines, the air cooled part is, you know, you take the cylinder out, you know, when you want to do replacement parts. It's not like head and block type of thing. It's really cylinder and remaining part. You know, where you divide the engine is not where you think you would divide it.
Well, I mean, so they design it with what they're calling it a case instead of a block, and you're bolting the cylinders on top and then the heads on top of the cylinders. Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, exactly right. So that's a little bit different. So
It's a
you know,
split
these
case.
cars are, yeah, but it's
Air cooled.
It's interesting that the cylinder comes out. So like the pistons, you can, you know, they're different than what you would expect. They're enclosed in each of their own thing.
Do you want to see an example? We've got parts coming out of our yin yang here.
Ted, how
Yeah,
many
that's what we
CCs
want.
is it? Ted,
Okay.
how many CCs is it?
What's that?
How many CCs is the engine?
Well, their standard one is 1600. When they first came out, I think they were 1300s.
1100 actually.
The guys using them on the street, the pretty common overbore is the 1760, right? That's a 1720. For our purposes, I don't think they're overboard at all. Just
40,000.
quiet, you.
No, the 40,000 is the legal.
There you go.
Legal overboard.
Here's our local authority on 356s. Everybody wave. And that's the case that you're referring to. Which in any other car you'd could, you know, it'd be the block.
The way we actually refer to them is jugs, blocks and jugs, cylinder jugs.
There you go. What are you looking for? A cylinder?
Similar to a Formula V.
Same idea.
Yep.
Could be because they're from the same guy.
Maybe.
You think?
I always think of my car as a Porsche.
Well, the V's are running 1300, so as opposed to 16s, right?
Yeah, 1200, please.
So do the Formula V's, are those the ones that have the trick of putting the transmission upside down so that they can run backwards? Is that how that
No,
works?
you pull the crown gear out and turn it around.
Ah,
Okay.
I think the same transmission diff, the same transaxle diff is the same case that I use in my Mazda. It's an upside down V.
Yeah, Hewlands are upside down V dubs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
yep.
And I think you're right, Paul. I remember that from my Formula Mazda. All right. What else would people like to see?
Well, what's in the
garage.
rack? Ed, give us a tour of what's in the racks.
What's in the
us
rack?
about each car that's in the rack.
Keep in mind that not all of these are mine. And so I asked the owners if anybody cared if their cars were in video, and no one was concerned. Just so that's a little disclaimer so nobody gets mad at me.
Show us
So the
how
bottom-
show us how the lift works.
Sure. Why don't we do that? So the lift is a composite. What we bought was an over tall one from Atlas. So the standard lift here, you can see the basic components, will raise a car up to 12 feet. So it's designed to put cars above Sprinter vans and that sort of thing. Now that shelf system that I have, we have shelves at 5, 10, and 15 feet. So what we did was we mounted a scissor jack on top of the 12-foot jack so we can actually elevate to 16 feet in total. And I'll hook it up, and I mean, it's a lift. I mean, there's nothing particularly clever or fancy about it, but I'll show you what I'm talking about. Entertain yourselves for a second, guys.
How many
So a hamburger and a hot dog walk into a restaurant, walk into a bar, and the bartender goes, "Hey, we don't serve food here."
Oh,
Anyone?
Wow.
We're still waiting to be entertained.
Yeah, wow. How many bug-eyed sprites are in the racks there, Ted, while you're walking around?
So there's 3 racing sprites, and there is a shell for a 4th one, and there's a 5th shell at my house.
Because
Anyone
you've
looking
run
for
out
a
of room in the
Sprite?
garage?
None of the sprites are for sale, so how can you sell a sprite?
How thick did you pour
are there
that
any
pad?
visiting bug eyes?
There are no visiting bug eyes.
Ah,
Jeremy's bug eye up is up at John Dodge.
Somebody's asking, somebody's
What's that?
asking how thick the concrete pad is, Ted.
It's an engineered pad, so it's fairly thick at the edges, and it's probably, I mean, it's been reinforced so you can park a tractor trailer on it. So I'm going to say it's 12 inches. That sound reasonable?
Yep. No,
Not thick enough?
no, 6-inch max.
Yeah,
thinner in the center.
of course, it will be thinner and much thicker
Yeah,
on the
yeah,
sides.
yeah. Edges will be thicker, but center about 6 in.
6
Yeah,
inches.
Ted, why
probably
don't you
right
weigh
bar.
that?
The right man.
Ted, why don't you weigh that 23 back section? I'd love to know what it weighs.
I'm sure you're just worried because yours is so heavy.
You're reading my mind.
Where's the little guy?
And you downplayed the complexity of your hoist system. I've seen it in person, guys, and it is absolutely amazing. There's great engineering in this. And the
Oh, it's
greatest
not
part,
it's
no one's
simple.
fallen off yet.
We put a lift on another lift. How complicated is that? We added the sidebars to give it rigidity, and we put safety railings on the upper lift, obviously, so you don't fall off at 15 feet off the ground. It's not complicated.
When an accountant does it, it's amazing it works.
I didn't build the lift. I mean, I thought the coolest thing was that they was adding these trailer wheels to the side so we could move it back and forth.
It's beautiful.
Ouch, Brian. Ouch. That was awesome.
It's beautiful.
Yeah,
Hey,
just
Brian,
ignore it.
I was here. I was here when we put it together. You're right.
And this wasn't me.
It
This
was entertaining. It was entertaining to watch.
This was Craig's brilliance and his friend Paul Walker, who's the fabricator we use for stuff. They're the guys who figured this out. Let me find another plug.
The fact that it's got wheels and you can traverse across the front of the racking is brilliant instead of using a tow motor. That's
Absolutely.
Well, and Craig can do it by himself. I mean, I haven't seen him. I don't know how much he's grunting. If I have to do it, it's a hell of a job. I just, that's a good way to have a heart attack.
Well, you are an accountant, Ted.
That's exactly. And I'm getting old, apparently. That's what my wife tells me.
An admission.
An admission of age. Well, because soon I get the discounts, don't I? Well, how does that work? Some of you guys must know. How do I get free stuff for getting old?
Hit 65.
65. Well, I'm not that old.
At 64, you start getting a bunch of correspondence you never want to read, Ted. That's how it works.
So anyway, guys, this is the Scissor Jack on top of the other jack. So these Scissor Jacks are designed to be portable so you can move them around your shop. And so what Paul and Craig did is they fabricated a shelf on the lower rack. We've anchored one end of the lift, and that's simply the way it operates. And so
What's
they get
the
to the top
capacity of
shelf
the scissors jack, Ted?
What's that?
What's the capacity of the scissors jack?
4,000 pounds.
Oh, okay.
And you'll notice, I mean, we don't put anything heavy on the top shelf. There's a midget shell there. There's a Janetta G15. There's a Sprite. There's my Malik. There's a mini shell. There's nothing heavy up there.
Right.
And operationally, so we raise the scissor while we're down low, and then we raise the rest of the rack up, as opposed to raising the scissors when we're 10 feet off the ground.
Mm-hmm.
So it's actually a pretty good solution.
Brilliant.
The alternative was to get a tow motor that was both heavy enough and stable enough to lift cars up and down. The cost probably would have ended up being a little higher, but I was more concerned with the diesel fumes, and just thought the risk of an accident was higher with the tow motor than it was with a stationary lift. Because obviously when we put this in position to roll cars on and off, we take it off the wheel so that it's sitting flat on the ground.
That's brilliant.
Ted, what's the amount of time it takes? Let's say you wanted to start and take a car off the top. Would you say it's like a 20-minute operation to get it out and then drive it around, or is it a little bit longer?
Yeah, so it would be better to ask Craig that. I don't think he's on the call. One of his kids is sick today. If the rack was already in position, lined up properly with the space, It's probably 5 minutes to get it up to full height properly, 5 minutes to the car. Yeah, 20 minutes would be tops. It's not complicated. You run the risk when you're on the top shelf in the wrong corners of getting hit by a ceiling fan. This is the voice of experience talking to you now.
Ted, show the drop-down tailgate.
Right. So at the far end of the lift, we've got the height restriction. Again, the bar across at the 5 feet. So we know we don't, whatever fits off the lift will fit on the rack. And then this aluminum bridge basically transitions from the rack onto the shelves. And it's designed so that obviously it fits between the posts. So, you know, again, you're properly lined up. There aren't going to be issues with the car. If I was doing this again, instead of building the racks the width that I did, so I've got the first 3 bays are 7 feet wide, and then there are 5 bays at 6 feet wide. I think I would have instead have done 4 bays at 14 feet wide. They can certainly withstand the weight. I mean, it's industrial racking. So each pair of these shelves is good for 5,000 pounds, and each bay has 3 sets of shelves. So we're not stressing the racking system at all. If we'd done wider spaces, it'd be easier to get the cars in and out, and they'd be a little more versatile. I mean, you'll notice, so like the Ferrari and Dell's Vets, they don't fit in the 6 foot spaces, so they've got to go in the 7s. Some of the newer cars, there's one of the guys who's got a Camry, a Cayman he uses in the summer. Well, it's wide enough that it doesn't actually fit in 6 feet, so it's got to go up high someplace. And it's just, it would be easier if we'd done this a different way. Wouldn't have been any less expensive, I don't think. But if I was redoing it, I would have made each of these bays double wide. It would have been a better way to go. What else would you like to see, folks?
Oh, we want to see the cars. So let's go through them. What you got?
See the cars. All right. Sorry, it didn't occur to me. I would have pulled the toter out. We could have pulled some of these out. So most of you will have seen my Ferrari at the track. It's a 348 Speciale, 1993. This is the first model of Ferrari that the dealership sold a challenge car option. So you bought the car for 75,000 bucks, and then they charged you $20,000 to put on plastic fenders and a plastic hood, to take the interior out and to put in a cage.
So is that one used to be red? Is that the one?
Well, it is still red. It's got a vinyl wrap on it now.
Oh, okay.
Hey, for the Mustang? Yeah.
Where's the
okay.
Mustang?
It's my car. How can I help you?
Oh, he's on a phone.
Oh, he's on another call. Okay. Dell's Roadster. Right. I can't tell you much about this except for Dell's really enjoying it.
Just hold on. I want to.
Dell, are you on the call?
Yeah, I am.
No, it's okay. Maybe.
Do you want to tell him anything about your Corvette?
No, but let me know.
What's your name?
Okay.
Greg?
The Street Bet.
I'll be back to you.
Above it,
Thanks.
we've got Rob McCord's 914.6. Rob is busy doing stuff, or I'm sure he talked to you about his car. A couple of street cars in here from a fellow I believe will be joining the club this year. Peter Askew's 944. Gary Allen's got 2 cars here right now. His beautiful Olan and his MGB. They're both under tarps. And then, of course, bug eyes coming out our ears, right? Street Mini. So this gets loaded on the trailer when I'm going out of town, so I can actually run into town wherever we are. You can't very well.
Yeah, but Street Mini, what's fun about it? Is that it's special. Why is it special then?
Well, I mean, it's a Japanese car, so it's right-hand drive. It's got a 1275. Actually, they call it a 1.3 liter because it's a Rover. The only disappointing thing about it is that it's an automatic. I got this from Larry Cost. I think he wants it back. It's a nice little car, though. I mean, it takes no space. And again, you can't drop a toter home to run into Canadian Tire or to Pip Boys if you need parts. So you take the Mini off the trailer and you take off for dinner or whatever. Sorry, guys, I'm running out of stuff to say. I'm back in the work area for the 23. So what happened with this was one of the drive shafts in the back broke off. You guys have seen these donuts assemblies, right? The drive shaft attaches to that on both sides. So
2 summers ago, I had a donut disintegrate at Shannonville, which destroyed the half shaft and made a mess of the rear end. The replacement part we bought, now, see how the half shaft is constructed? These are the mounting points to the donut, and the replacement part, one of those mounting points sheared off, and then that wrecked the half shaft. Well, I don't know if there's a problem in the way that the rear end is set up or if it was a manufacturing defect. And now there's no way to know. We've got 2 new parts are coming, so Craig will put this together in the next week or 2, and then we'll try again. I guess if it turns out that it was something misaligned or set up wrong, or we've got an issue with the transmission, we'll find out because the 3rd one will break. I don't think Craig's going to let that happen. I hope Craig's not going to let that happen. What else would you like, gentlemen?
Well, so Ted, I'd like to know, what was your introduction into racing? How did you find out about it? And what was the first car that you purchased that actually you brought onto a track?
Yeah. Well, so I'll give you some history, guys. I joined the club in 2006. I was out for a drive in an MG Midget at that time, just tooling around actually, and I came across the festival. And so I paid my admission fee, went in, and I did, I just saw all these guys running all these great cars. The first call I made, I was advised to call John DeMaria to see what it would take to convert my Midget into a race car. And John said, well, that's just stupid, Ted. You should just buy a pre-built car. Oh, and by the way, my Bug Eye Sprite is for sale. So Bug Eye Sprite 123, which is still on the shelves over here, was John's car. It was originally brought into the club, I think, by Bob Mason. So it's had 5 owners. And so I bought that. And the first race event that I had was at Tremblant, the Summer Classic that year. And we were all thrown out on Sunday because the owner wanted to race his Ferraris with his buddies. It was an interesting introduction to racing. But I'm quite sincere when I say, if we allow the bigger Series A engines in the Sprites, I'll probably get rid of most of these other cars. The Sprites are that much fun to drive. It's just with the 998s in them, I'm running around at 150, 151. Craig is capable of 147. So there aren't a lot of people to race with, but you put the 1275s in them, they're going to run 142s. And there are lots of people between 142 and 148 to race with. So.
And Ted, as you know, I'm all on board with the 1275s going into Sprites because I want Craig to have a fair chance against me, and he already beats me.
Well, and Craig is holding off building an engine right now because he doesn't know. Should he build a 998 or should he build a 1275? The purpose of this thing wasn't to turn it into a sales pitch for 1275s. It's just letting you know where my head's at on that stuff.
So Ted, was number 123, was that the car that went upside down or was it a different one?
123, was it the one? No, not 789 is the car that flipped upside down. 789 is in the racks beside 123 right now.
That's a car that Julie drives sometimes, right?
No, 789 is the car that Craig drives on most weekends because he hasn't built his yet. So the story with the turnover was, I was going down number 4. The car was sideways because of oil on the track, and I believe I hit the concrete curb. I hit something that caused the car to flip. And so it flipped upside down and slid from the top of 4 to the bottom of 4 and then into the gravel. It wore the roll bar flat. The fuel cell was leaking a little bit because it was completely inverted, which was scary as hell because you had the sparks from the roll bar and, of course, the gasoline dripping down. I was really excited about that. The car actually made it through the incident better than I thought. We had to do some serious work on the bonnet and obviously repair the roll bar. But the rest of the car was basically fine. And of course I was unhurt, which was good. 20 minutes later, I was in the Ferrari back on the track. So
Ted, I have to ask a question. When I went into the guardrail at 5, I said, oh shit, Larry Cost had gone in a few laps earlier and he said, he didn't swear. Now, did you say bad words?
I don't recall saying bad words. I remember being upside down and thinking, this is not good. This is not good. And my hand stayed on the steering wheel, as we're trained to do, as opposed to, throwing them over your head, which can get something broken. But I don't remember issuing expletives. Julie pulled into the gravel just after the car came to a stop in one of the other sprites. She was saying expletives. Julie's my sister, guys, for those of you who haven't met her. She stopped racing a couple of years ago because she keeps having children. No, I don't remember, but I did need a new driving suit. I'm sure that's going to be the next question. Now, the second car is way up on the top shelves. That's the series Mark 8.9 Malik U2. Fabulous little car. I have to say that I loved driving it, particularly because Brian was driving his and there was always somebody to race with. These cars are underrated. The value isn't too bad, about 20 grand US, and they're very fast when driven properly. I don't know that I was ever driving it properly, because I think my best time was a 36 in it. Brian, I think, did better than that. And certainly Phil and Dave, who also had them, I think they turned 34s. So obviously I'm not setting the standard for these cars. I don't fit in it anymore. In the last 3 years, I've put on 25 pounds, and so I can't actually get in the damn car and drive it. So if anyone wants a Malik, let me know.
Ted, it's the COVID-19 pounds. That's the stopper.
I would like to blame it on COVID, but unfortunately it started before COVID. So maybe I had an early version of the disease. That's what it is.
What about the 7?
So the 7, this was built by Mark Brown. So what he did was I want to say the fall or summer of 2019, he found 2 chassis in England. So it's an original 7 chassis, obviously, one for a Series 3, which is what my car is, and one for a Series 2. He had them repaired, refabricated, remanufactured, whatever you want to describe it, in England, and then shipped them here. And he spent the winter building them. I paid him for labor and parts, obviously, and he used the labor that I was paying him to pay for the parts to build his. I don't think we've seen him on the track yet. So he may not have finished his because, I was the paying customer, so he put the effort into finishing mine. This is a fun little car. I like 7s. I always thought that this was the perfect vintage race car for somebody to buy if you're only going to have one car, because you can take it anywhere. It's always accepted. It's going to be competitive, and they're fun to drive. This particular one, I bought the engine from David Klubine. I don't know where he got it. He said it was out of a Formula B. When it blew last year, we discovered that it had been overboard 200 and sleeved back over 100. And so it's just whoever had built it before David got a hold of it had overdone it. We're sticking a new block in, obviously, and rebuilding it. It's going to be a fun car again. Just a lesson to be learned, right? There are limits to what you can do to these blocks and to these engines. All right, what else we got on the go? The Lotus 18 is still on the truck. It's been there all winter, as is the 993 Porsche. They both should be ready to go for the spring.
So which would you call your most reliable car, Ted, out of your fleet?
The Mercedes I used to drive back and forth to work every day.
Oh, race car.
Out of the race cars?
Yeah.
Depends on what you mean by reliable, Chris. If you
had to do an
998
enduro,
Sprites,
if you had to do like a 2-day enduro kind of thing, 6 hours one day, 7 hours another day, what would you pick?
993.
Well,
993.
Yeah.
Yes, the 993 is bulletproof because it's a stock drivetrain. The Ferrari actually was bulletproof. Had to replace the fuel pump. It has 2, and it hasn't had proper fuel delivery since. Get starvation in the corners and some other issues. So I think Craig didn't do that work, so it was Rocco's down in Scarborough, and I think whatever he took out, he didn't replace with the same unit or the same setup. And so we've been having issues ever since. That's why the Ferrari hasn't been out on track. Dell will be happy to tell you that least expensive thing about owning a Ferrari is buying it, and he was right. I spent more money rebuilding the engine 3 years ago than I bought the car for. So lesson learned there as well. From the vintage cars perspectives, if you have just done the head gasket on a Sprite, it's probably good for 3 weekends. The problem with Sprites is that if you don't do the head gaskets regularly when you've got it back at home, you know you're going to blow it on the weekend. And repairing it at the track, you can do it in a couple hours, but it's not going to be as good a job as doing it in the shop, and it's not going to last as long. The
So a
Malik used
vintage
to be-
car, you think you wouldn't be able to have a vintage car run for like a 6 hours, like one of those lucky dog things where it's, I think 6 hours one day, 7 hours the next.
I think if a Sprite had just had its head gasket done, it could certainly run for a weekend.
And you would
I
change
think-
the head gasket like on the Saturday night kind of thing, something like that.
You certainly could to be preemptive, but I don't think that would be an issue. I mean, if it was running for 6 hours straight, it's less likely to have an issue than running 20 minutes, cooling off, heating up again, cooling off, heating up. I mean, it's the starting and stopping and transitioning that's hard on the cars. It's not the constant running.
Is it? Okay, I didn't know that. Good.
When the 356 is running properly, I think it could easily run an enduro for 2 days too.
Yeah, because I mean, that doesn't use a lot of radiator fluid. It's pretty good for that.
The rest of the vintage cars, actually, you know, the Malik used to be really dependable. And, you know, if Brian would stop playing with his, it would be dependable too, right, Brian?
Absolutely.
So on those engines on the Malik, are they the Ford 1.6 liters? Is that what's in them, or is it something else?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's the Ford. Most of them are cross flows. Although I think that Ivan, he may or may not be on the call. He may have a twin cam in one of his.
He does.
Yeah, I've got a twin cam in mine.
Right.
And the twin cam, that's the Lotus engine, right? That's not a Ford engine.
Yeah, it's
Well,
a Lotus. In this case, it's a Lotus twin cam. 800.
It's still built on the Kent block, right? It started out as a Ford, and then they changed everything above the block.
Yeah, that's correct.
So the Ford's so the crossflow in the Ford is maybe what, 160 horsepower, and the twin cam is maybe 175. Does those sound like reasonable numbers, guys?
Those
Yeah,
are, those are
some
good,
may be
reliable.
some may be pub
reliable
horsepower.
numbers.
Yeah.
Sorry? And you can run one of those for like 3-4 seasons without too much effort, as long as you keep the your revs down.
Yeah, if you don't over rev it doing something stupid.
Yeah, they're really bulletproof. Like literally, you can
Well,
get,
and on top of that, the Maliks are at most 1,100 pounds.
Correct.
Maybe, 500
That's right.
kilograms.
yeah.
And so you're not putting a strain on it that way. It's the
The only
The
issue
build-
with the only issue with the
build-
Alex is the bloody Sprite pumpkins
Yes.
and the axles that just fall out at will.
The build on the engine of my Malik is 5 years. 5 years.
Yeah. Oh, so that's all right.
Economical.
Pick another topic. Anyone?
So let me go back. So it sounds like from other people that if you prepare for a race weekend with a vintage car, like an enduro or like a long type of weekend thing, most people think that they could make it. I mean, it sounds like they say, being prepared for it. If you're the trouble is the cycles, but a lot of these cars, a lot of our cars could make it the entire weekend of a longer race.
Yeah, Chris,
think
to be
they
safe, take 2 cars. Always a good idea.
The challenge would be fueling as well, because all of us have got these small 5-gallon fuel cells. So we're only good for 30 or 35 minutes on the track anyway. So you'd go crazy.
I didn't say
fueling.
competitive. Me, it's just to make it last.
Yeah. Well, but my mind obviously goes to maybe we should rent Shannonville one day for just an enduro. We'd need 25 guys to enter. So your entry fee would be $1,000, $800, and we could certainly do it without too much trouble. I mean, it costs about 20 grand to run Shannonville for a day between rental, emergency vehicles, and everything. So if there was interest, we could throw an event like that together pretty quickly.
Well, see, so that's the kind of thing where I'm going, right? I like the idea of a longer we used to have the 1 hour enduro during the VGP, and I thought those were really fun because for cars that are like, well, speaking personally, for cars that are less competitive on a short race, longer race where there's like, fuel and, there's like a equilibrium at some point where you reach a point of, I'm not competitive per lap, but over an hour and a half, then maybe I'm kind of competitive, sort of thing.
Well, but you may not be remembering properly. When we ran the enduro, it was two sessions, each 30 minutes. You could run the whole thing, but I don't remember anybody having enough fuel to run the whole thing.
Yeah.
And so you'd have a partner.
So I did. That's the year that I won. I did that.
Did you? Congratulations.
Yes.
That's why you won.
Well, because I ran 55 minutes and consistently. Remember, that was the 1 year where we did Dell had come up with these great rules where it was like consistency was the key. You had to be within the same. So once you're like, the first lap, you're getting settled in and everything like that. After that, if you just bang them out and then stay the same, that's how it won. So it was great. I just thought that was interesting because it's a different way. I was never going to finish first, but that kind of strategically thinking anyways was interesting to me personally.
Yep. Well, and do you remember how many guys entered that year?
No, I don't. I think we were like a dozen maybe, but it was not, not the most.
That's part of the problem with the enduros. I think the peak entry was maybe 20 cars, and
I'm not asking to do it for the VGP, but I just like the idea of events. A one-off Shannonville, that's interesting to me too.
Yep. No, I'm not suggesting we do it at the VGP. I'm just explaining why it ended up off the schedule because it just wasn't attractive to enough people. 12 cars is not a good use of an hour of track time. Dave, are you on the call? Dave Good? Or John Hawks?
Yeah, it's Dave. I'm on the call. Yeah, go ahead.
So something to think about for next year.
Sure.
Certainly, Shannonville could be structured in such a way that we did sprint sessions for 2/3 of the day, and then we ran an enduro at the end of the day, just as something different to do. Or literally, if we could get 25 guys that were willing to pony up somewhere between $800 and $1,000, we could do an enduro for a full day. Something for people to think about for the future.
What are we going to do about fueling? Because that's a big issue, fueling hot cars.
Yeah, you've got to find a safe way to do it. And so literally the safest way to run an enduro is either you've got dedicated pit crews and some pretty complicated rules for fueling, or it's got to be 2-car teams. The second car goes out in the track and your car goes back to your paddock area for refueling any kind of refurbishment.
CASD has a full set of rules and protocols for refueling. I've ran enduros with the 3-hour enduros a few times, so they got it all figured out. You got to have the proper fuel tanks. You got to have rags all around your fuel, so zero leakage. They actually have a scrutineer stands there and watches you, so it's regulated pretty closely.
Yeah, but I don't know that our guys would be willing to do it that way. Remember,
that's the thing. You got to basically have like 3 guys or 4 guys to run the enduro, right? Is what we had to do, right?
You got to basically have a full crew, and it can be other drivers, but everybody in fire suits and helmets being able to step over the wall to fuel the car. But it can be done, and so it certainly is worth looking at.
Lucky Dog runs three people over the wall, 1 guy holding an extinguisher, 1 guy fueling, and 1 guy venting, I think.
Cool. Yeah. So we wouldn't be reinventing the wheel.
No, actually, you should look at a Lucky Dog weekend. I think they're running Calabogie and Mosport in the spring, and maybe somebody observe.
We probably have somebody in the club that's running the damn thing, don't we?
Well, John DeMaria runs in a 93 MR2.
Okay.
Tom Smith and my friend Steve Mantle and Rob run a 93 Civic and are quite successful with it.
Yeah, there's a little YouTube series also from the fellow running a like a metal yellow type of color scheme Chevy truck, I think it is. Which
Oh
looks
yeah, those
interesting
guys are
too.
pretty good too.
Yeah, so I think John actually won last year in the MR2, if I'm not mistaken. So
John won something. How surprised.
Yeah, Tim Gorley's car out of Bethany. That was the one.
all right, so then Ted, so which would you call your prized possession then of race cars, not street cars? Which would
So
you say, oh
honestly,
my God, this one here is so awesome?
the car that I enjoy driving the most is the 356.
Ah,
But having said that, I honestly believe with the 1275 and a bug eye, I mean, I'm quite committed to the whole idea. I'd get rid of most of these other cars and run that all the time. The reason I
So why
like
would you say the 356? Is it the sound? Is it the experience? Or it's just like it's such an easy driving car?
Well, they're not particularly easy to drive. It's a different driving car because of the physics, right? The rear engine hanging out. Your braking is all done before you get into the corner. You've got to accelerate through the corner. Mostly because of the lap times that it turns. There's always people to race with. I mean, the big attraction of vintage racing for me is having somebody to go out and play with. I mean, when Brian's Malik was broken and there weren't any other ones in the club, I stopped running the Malik because there wasn't anybody to race with. I mean, John Hawks may feel that same way about his Merlin some weekends, right? If we're broken and there's nobody out there, I don't want to go to a vintage lapping day. I want to go to a race day. And so the Porsche is a nice size, nice speed. I like the way it handles. But again, if Sprites had enough power to be more competitive, I would just run the Sprite all the time.
So is a Sprite like a car where, like for me, so I'm thinking it's personal, right? Because it's all I know. The Fiats are like no good on the straights, but they're awesome in the corners. So the first half of the lap, like from 1 down to 5, I usually catch up to whoever. Whereas on the back straight from like 5 to 10, they're gone. And then it's repeat. That's sort of the same thing for like a...
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the Sprite, well, I mean, Craig is 4 seconds a lap faster than me because he retains a lot more speed in the corner. Like he is still probably flat through 8 and into 9. He's definitely flat through 1 and 2. So I mean, it's a momentum car. You've got to stay fast, but it doesn't matter how fast you come out of 5B. I mean, it only can go so fast up the back straight. And so you pull over to the left and let people blow by you. And then you're right. Because you'll run into 8 quick, you'll catch up with them there. And by the time you get back to 5A, you're probably right on everybody's tail again. And then, of course, they take off on you. The story repeats. But that's the same for any low horsepower car that competes with a high horsepower car.
But is that what happens in the 356, for instance? Or is it different? How does it work in a 356?
Well, so the 356 has got enough power that it's not as likely for somebody to just run away from you in the back straight the same way as the Sprite does. So the 356, I mean, I think I've turned a 44, 45 with it. I'm pretty sure that Jeff used to turn 42s. The 356.
Best time was a 40.6.
So Jeff's best time was a 40.6. When Vic Skirmats comes up, he runs 140, 141. So the only reason is to like it more is because there are more people to play with. So if I'm going around the lap in the Sprite at 151, on most regional weekends, there isn't anybody else back there at 151. You've got to get down to 147 to have some competition. And with a 1275, the Sprite probably drops down with me driving to 44, which means there's lots of people to play with. That's the only reason to push for the engine. I'll tell you that it's a lot more dependable, reliable because the engine is more robust. But the real reason is just so that there are more people to race with. I mean, I don't go vintage racing to lap my car. I go vintage racing to have fun playing with you other guys on the track. If that makes any sense.
Perfect sense.
Yeah.
So do you have one car that you said, okay, well, this one I'm keeping forever, there's no way I'm selling it? Or are you more of a practical, everything has a price tag type of?
Well, I've only sold a couple of race cars because people called me and asked to buy them. So I'd like to think that I'm practical, but I guess I don't have the same financial constraints as some of the guys in the club. So it doesn't make as much difference. That being said, Again, I'm quite serious. I would run the Sprites all the time if it had the bigger engine in it.
So get a midget.
Well, and we have a midget shell. I mean, we're at the point where it's build a midget because that would be the right thing to do. So we're ready to do that. And that answers the question, right? I would just prefer to run the Sprite if I can. I don't know why, because I guess I started with a Sprite. But you're right. To stay within the rules, the correct answer is build a midget. I agree with that.
Unless,
and we'll get to it. But
unless I get to put a 356 engine in the Formula V.
Well, I don't have a problem with that. But the Formula V is a spec series, though. Somebody might have a problem. Don't we have that?
Formula 1200.
Somebody shows up at the festival with a Formula V with a 1600 in it, doesn't he? And runs on our Formula Classic grid.
There's the US class.
Yeah, I mean it's not a. It's not a V anymore. I don't know what the hell he calls it, but
Formula First.
He seems to have fun with it.
Oh well.
Oh well. Any more? We're coming up on the hour mark, so we can be done. I'm sorry, it's not much of a garage tour. It's a garage, right? It's a big warehouse and a area to work on cars.
It's fabulous, Ted.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Well done.
I like the storage shelves. That was a
I
good
want
idea.
something to put on them.
Well, right now there's 6 project cars on these damn shelves. They'll all be gone by next fall. I got to tell you guys, for anybody who's trailering up to Mossport on a regular basis, it's cheaper to leave your car here. I'm full right now, so I can't sell you space anyway. But I'm telling you, economically, it makes more sense to leave it here than it does to trailer at home. But
Don't
anyway,
talk
that's a different conversation.
economics. Don't talk economics. Make more sense to get rid of half the cars.
And I see you're doing a good job of doing that yourself, Del.
Yeah, right.
So what are some of the project cars? Are they cars that would potentially join us, or what are they?
Well, so way up on the top shelf, you see that blue mini shell. That's one of the Baker minis. Bob Duchesne had it, decided he needed some cash, so Craig had me buy it from him. It's definitely coming out again once we get it built. The issue's been the Bakers did some very interesting things with their engines, and we're trying to build it the same way. And so we're having issues with the machinists actually building what we're telling them to build. I think Craig's getting frustrated with the guys, but that's a different conversation. The black Mini on the second tier here is one that Craig built years ago for a fella. He got out of whatever he was doing, so we bought it back, but it needs some work. It'll definitely be out to the club, and it'll probably get sold reasonably cheap as an entry car for somebody to join us. Now, I bought John Sambrook's 315 G15s, but they require more work than we thought they were going to require. And I mean, they're so far down on the project list, I think I'm actually just going to sell them. I'll give you an honest appraisal of what kind of shape they're in if somebody's interested in them. But they're going to take more work than we're prepared to put into them. At least that they're not high enough on the priority list. And then, of course, there's the midget cell, which at the next AGM, I'm going to try the 1275 motion one more time. If it doesn't work, then we'll build a damn midget. So we'll move on from that. So I think they'll all come out to the club at some point or another. Anything else, Chris?
No, so I mean, members, unless there's nothing else, I wanted to thank Ted. You did excellent preparatory work. I appreciate you asking all your other vendors also to make sure that we'd be able to look at all their cars. I mean, it's definitely a garage-mahal like I had anticipated. So thank you so much for taking the time to display this for us today. I greatly appreciate it.
Welcome.
Thank you, Ted.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks,
Guys,
Ted.
Thanks, Ted. Thanks, Chris.
before people leave, May 1st, there's at least 2 CSC scrutineers coming to this building to do pre-season inspections again. I'll post something to the chat so people can sign up. But if you want to get your car checked before the first event, we'll be doing them again May 1st of this year.